insane. It's insane. He's very fast. He's very fast. And our last item for Van Halen news comes from an episode of Recreating the Sound with Rick Beato, or is it Beato? I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was trying to match the signature snare sound of Alex Van Halen. So what he did was he got a Ludwig Superphonic snare, and he got the silver dots covering and a die-cast hoops, and he was going for like a real dry sound, and then he did this special pattern on the drum with this gaff tape, not duct tape, but gaff tape, in the formation of an A for Alex, and then he filled in the A with some gaff tape, and he used these special rock and roll drumsticks, and he showed how to get the Alex Van Halen sound, and he's using I'll Wait as an example, which is actually a beautiful Alex Van Halen performance on that song. And he said he couldn't quite capture Alex Van Halen's attack, because Alex hits the rim shots in very special places to make it the way he is. But they used all kinds of tricks to try to get his sound, and they came very, very, very close. That's really cool. If you want to check that out, that's on YouTube right now, called Recreating the Sound with Rick Beato, or is it Beato? Beato. And that wraps up Van Halen news.
And that's the way it is. Good night.
We have a special episode to kick off the fall. You love them, you know them, you got them. The Atomic Punks, the world's most famous Van Halen tribute band. We got both the lead singer, Brian Geller, and the guitarist, Lance Turner. And we have them in back-to-back interviews. And these guys talk about everything from all their years with the Punks. These guys have been doing it for over 10 years. The Atomic Punks, I don't know if you guys have caught them. They recently put out a online streaming concert. If you want to check it out, I believe Van Halen News Desk has it. It's also on the band's Facebook page. It's also on our Facebook page if you want to check it out. They did it with the Monsters of Rock. Wow, guys. Just if you are itching for some Van Halen, I think we talked about this in the last news, and they're fantastic guys. But the set list and all the nuance that they bring to this performance is just incredible. So please go check it out. We're going to have these interviews with Brian and Lance. But before we do that, Dave, you got to earn your keep. And it is mailbag time, and wow, I'm going to knock your block off with a sack of mail that's going to make you crap your pants. So hope you're...
Well, then it's editing time.
Oh, yeah. Dave was already texting me last night saying, we're not reading all of number 2. We're skipping number 12. He's going down a lot. He's unbelievable, this guy, because, Dave gets sleepy. But just so everybody knows, on this end of things, we bumped our recording time up an hour so old man Winter over here can get his nap in. We're going to break for a few minutes before we get into mail so Dave can catch a quick 15-minute nap, and then we are on to mailbag.
Thank you, Sonny.
Take a listen.
Van Halen, heavy metal music, any kind of rock music, is what I call high-velocity folk. I look at heavy metal music, Van Halen's brand, rather, of heavy metal music, as a combination of religion and hockey.
If you need a dose of VH, get a taste of the closest thing. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band. Playing all the hits from the David Lee Roth era, first classic 6 albums, plus deep cuts, some of which have never been played live before by the band. They even throw in popular tracks from the Sammy Hagar era and solo hits. The most viewed Van Halen tribute band on YouTube, Romeo Delight, doing customized recreations of staging, instruments, and costumes from the classic Van Halen era. They even perform entire Van Halen albums in sequence. Romeo Delight plays theaters, casinos, summer indoor and outdoor festivals, and special events. They're also available for private parties. To contact them, call Bud Blanche at 215-704-5144. That's 215-704-5144. Or via email at sonicparade1@yahoo.com. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Damon Johnson from Brother Kane and Black Star Riders, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained. Crank it up.
Pick up the new coffee table-sized book, The Decade That Rocked, by legendary rock photographer Mark Weissguy Weiss.
This 376-page book has hundreds and hundreds of full-color photos that Weiss shot through the 80s for magazines like Circus, Faces, and Hit Parader, featuring bands like Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. There's even behind-the-scenes stories to go with these colorful, eye-popping pictures. The Decade That Rocked, a new book by rock photographer Mark Weiss, is available for purchase now. Go to thedecadethatrocked.com, where there are exclusive bundles available with extra prints, t-shirts, and even patches. Inquire about the Van Halen bundle, especially made for Dave and Dave Unchained listeners. Order today. The Decade That Rocked. It'll rock your world.
You know, people ask me all the time, when are you going to do a solo record? Well, every Van Halen record's a solo record because we all, within this unit, have the freedom to express our ideas within the band. Yeah. So if I did do a solo record, which every Van Halen record is, because I'd ask them to play on it anyway.
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Well, my buddy Dave, he don't want me around. He says he's tired of watching me let him down. He just wants a good mailbag. He wants only the best. But he hates disappointment better than all the rest. And he says that he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble if I don't nail the mailbag intro.
That's right, it's mailbag time again. This is a special beginning to this mailbag segment because we have two letters that already ran, but I promised these two men that I would reach out to Greg Renoff and he would answer them, and he did that for us. So, starting off with a letter from Andrew Bonamore, which we talked about before, I read, but I'm going to read quickly again so that Greg can answer it. So Andrew says, if Ted didn't want to produce Van Halen without Dave, as he believed it wasn't Van Halen, why didn't he have the same view with the Doobie Brothers when founder Tom Johnston left and Michael McDonald joined? In the book, he describes the chemistry between Tom and Pat and that they were the heart of the band and central to the songwriting. Why the different views? And this is what Greg said.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for the question about Ted's book and about Michael McDonald and Tom Johnston and David Lee Roth. In the book, Ted indicates that everyone involved with the Doobies wanted Tom Johnston to come back. That includes Michael McDonald. If you read the book carefully, Ted a couple places indicates that even Mike was not 100% comfortable becoming the new face of the Doobies. He had always been a session guy and a side guy, and so he sort of got pushed to the forefront because Tom was sick. So I don't think it's a matter of comparing the two situations, because when Ted would talk to me about Van Halen, he would talk about how obviously Ed and Dave were healthy and walking around Pasadena and just basically unable to work together. And that was his frustration, that you had these great guys who were world-class changing musicians that were unable to basically find a way to work together because of whatever you want to say in terms of creative differences or all the other stuff we think we all know was going on at the time. And so that was Ted's frustration with that. It wasn't that, Dave or Ed was ill and was unable to go on the road or unable to go to the studio, which was the situation with Tom. So that's what I would say the differences between those two situations. Hopefully that answers the questions, and thanks a lot for your interest in the book, and I appreciate you guys at Dave and Dave getting these questions to me.
All right, now a letter from Steve Owen said Ted Templeman claims that the first 5 seconds of Hot for Teacher are not Alex playing drums, but are actually the recorded exhaust of Eddie's Lamborghini. As a drummer who has studied this intro extensively, I'm calling bullshit on this story. We all know that the Lambo exhaust was used to great effect during the breakdown of Panama, but the intro for Hot for Teacher is all Alex on drums. Steve Owens. All right, so here's the answer from Greg.
Hey, Steve, I read your question you passed along about the Lamborghini exhaust and the beginning of Hot for Teacher. I'm not sure what to tell you other than I wasn't there, you weren't there, Ted was there, and the guys in the band were there, and Ted's recollection was that was something that was done with the first 5 seconds of Hot for Teacher it was part of the Lamborghini exhaust. I will tell you, the only thing I can listen to in my own ears and hear is you can hear Alex click the sticks about 1 or 2 seconds in. Listen in headphones, you can hear it. You know, maybe Alex will come out and dispute the story and say that Ted has it all wrong, but as far as I know, there was only 4 or 5 people in the world who were there at the time and saw it. Ted was one of them. That was his very strong recollection. I mean, he told me a number of times when we listened to it, that's what happened. So that's what's in Ted's memoir, based on Ted's memory. And maybe one day we'll hear from Alex or Ed, and we can further hear more about the beginning of Hot for Teacher. But that's Ted's recollection, was the first few seconds of it was the Lamborghini exhaust, and then there's a splice, and then the drums begin. Okay, appreciate your interest in the book, and thank you guys for giving me this question.
All right, people, so don't say I didn't do anything for you. I reached out to Greg to give you your answers. There you go. Dave and I already talked about these, so I want to reiterate our opinions here, but now you got your answers from Greg, and we're going to kick off our mailbag. Letter number 1 comes from Jason Simmons from Central Valley, and he says, "Hey, Daves, I just started listening to your podcast about a year ago. They keep me company on my long rides to work. Anyway, a couple of things that I find irritating. Number 1, it's been said on more than one occasion that Sammy didn't want Van Halen to be a cover band. Yet on multiple occasions, they've done covers on The Who and Sammy's solo stuff and other things. Are these not considered covers? And number 2, I know Marconi doesn't like what ifs. However, what if back in the day, vinyl and cassettes and 8-tracks, for all that matter, weren't limited on time? What kind of songs do you think would have been added to each album to make them longer? Keep up the great work, and I enjoy your podcast as the company rides are long. Jason Simmons." All right, Jason, thank you very much for listening. It's great to have you listening. I'm glad that we keep you company in the car, because I know what that's like. I like to listen to podcasts when I drive, too. So, to answer your questions, number 1, regarding the whole Sammy cover series. Sammy used the covers as an excuse, in my opinion, because he didn't want to do the Dave stuff. Now, here's the deal. When Sammy and his manager, Ed Loeffler, the late Ed Loeffler, came into Van Halen, the plan was to kind of wipe out anything to do with Dave. If you notice, everything changed. The logo changed. They didn't do videos. They limited old songs in the set list. They dressed differently. They called the album 5150, which, looking back now, I think is a big FU, because 5150 was sort of the wedge, meaning 5150 the studio, and Eddie sort of taking more control of the band was sort of the wedge that, kind of created a riff there in Van Halen. So I thought that was kind of a little bit of The covers was their way of cleaning the slate of the old band while keeping the name for the brand recognition, and also because it's Ed and Al's family name. So there's that. Now it's time for What If with Dave and Dave. Shit, what if? What if? Dave Marconi's favorite segment, What If? What if, motherfucker?
I don't do what ifs.
Number 2, in regards to your question, I think it's hard to say in regards to the length of the albums because the world was so different back then, but I think you would have maybe got an extra cut or 2, but sometimes less is more. And I think Van Halen didn't really have a lot of extra leftover tunes. For example, we're in the CD era, and on balance, they left off Crossing Over on the main release of the album, with the exception of the Japanese album. In Van Halen 3, CD era, they left off That's Why I Love You. So, what does that say? It just goes to show you, here are 2 albums that had extra tracks that might have been worth putting on the album, and they didn't do it. So, and they had the time and space to do it. So I don't know what would have happened back in the day, to be honest with you. I don't see albums as being that long. Obviously tape, you could always add tape, You're limited on vinyl for sure. That's for sure. What do you think, Dave?
I don't think they would have been that much longer because they were pumping out an album a year.
Right.
So how much additional material are they going to have?
Yeah, exactly.
That's all, folks.
And regarding the first thing, that was just an excuse. That was just a cop-out, the whole cover band thing.
Yeah.
We have been over that ad nauseum, that's just like a sad excuse by Sam.
Right, that's the truth. Okay, so we have a letter from Peter Geierson from Blenheim, New Zealand, and wow. Congratulations, Peter. I think you hold the record for the